that my plan wasn't unique because of the fact that it, actually I don't want to ask that. Talking about the precautionary principle, could you kind of just briefly, real briefly talk about the precautionary principle real quick?
Which one was that?
Precautionary principle. It's what you said at the beginning after you surmised and agreed with almost everything I said. I'm just wondering about the precautionary principle because if we're so concerned about the precautionary principle, then why are we still using genetically modified organisms that haven't been adequately researched? And before you answer that question, I don't want you to answer it. I want you to answer the question. You said that you didn't know where I was connecting the infertility and all those other environmental risks and health risks, how I was connected to genetically modified organisms. Can you explain to me where that confusion is so that I can clear it up for you?
No, that's fine.
She has. Well, I mean, I knocked it by the time, so she has time to answer it if she wants. Oh no, we didn't do that last time. We didn't do it last time. I remember. I'm doing debate from high school.
Yeah, you are doing debate from high school.
Okay. How much prep time do I get?
You get 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
4 minutes. Give me 2.
Okay. And do you want to tell you every 30 seconds and everything?
Tell me at the minute.
Okay.
Can't bring you points on.
Thank you. Can you tell me when I'm at 1:30?
Yeah. It's the 30.
Okay. I don't need that last 30. This bad boy is 6. Okay.
Wait a sec. 6 minutes, yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay. So first I'd like to thank my opponent for surmising my entire argument and all of my harms and my plan all for you guys, and my solvency all for you guys at the beginning of her speech, because it makes it abundantly clear how harmful these genetically modified organisms are. She agrees with all of my points on the possible negative effects and risks and environmental and health risks associated with genetically modified organisms. Her only argument is that my counterplan doesn't solve that. However, I plan to show you guys that it does. So just real quick, tell you guys again, since I didn't really get to it in my last speech, my solvency is that this plan will solve the current issue because consumers are likely to avoid genetically modified foods, thus pressuring the market to produce fewer GM crops. Because of this, there will be far fewer health and environmental issues associated with farming. Now, my opponent talks about how regulating will increase costs and will bring these costs down to the consumer. However, as I showed from my report, her report simply said that costs will go up. Nobody's going to argue the costs go up. Of course they're going to go up. However, I'm not calling for a ban on genetically modified organisms. I'm just asking to label them. Labeling them will give consumers a choice, which I think everyone can agree consumers should have, and to prove that it's going to reduce the production of genetically modified organisms, I gave you the ABC News poll that said 57% of people said that they'd be less likely to buy foods labeled as genetically modified organisms. My opponent said that, oh, well, of course, given the option of genetically modified versus non-genetically modified, they're going to choose the non-genetically modified, and that they will choose the genetically modified once they see the price difference. However, once again, as I showed, there are minimal, very minimal costs associated with labeling genetically modified organisms to the consumer. My opponent, when she was surmising my argument, she liked to say that, quote, he's also saying. I'm not just saying, I'm also proving. All my statements have evidence to back them up. This isn't just me saying what I believe. I have statements from doctors, I have statements from herbalists, I have statements from peer-reviewed articles, from epidemiologists. These are, to say that there are no health risks, as she said when she quoted all those world organizations that said they are safe, then why is there so much backlash against them? If they're so safe, then why has the European Union banned most of them? If they're so safe, why have 62 total countries banned genetically modified organisms in some form or fashion? To say that they are safe and that they don't have risk associated is just simply untrue because of the fact that a lot of other countries have done similar things. My opponent also had a difficult time connecting my harms to genetically modified organisms, and so I'd like to clear that up for her and for y'all. So my harms were really associated with herbicide and pesticide usage. Now, these genetically modified crops, what they are herbicide and pesticide resistant, allowing farmers and industry to put even more pesticide and herbicide on their crops without having to worry about it affecting their crop. So, that being said, when you put more to the tune of 404 million pounds of toxic pesticides, according to Charles Benbrook from the Journal of Environmental Science in Europe from 2012, you're going to have increased issues with pesticide and herbicides. Like the study done in Berkeley that found that pesticides turn male frogs into female frogs, like the study done in Germany that found widely used pesticides, not just random pesticides that they pick and choose, widely used pesticides can kill frogs within an hour. And to the health risks, there was a direct connection between the pesticide runoff and the lower sperm count in humans. So that's the connection between genetically modified crops and my harms, is that genetically modified crops allow for greater usage of pesticides and herbicides. As Scott McAllister said, before biotech came onto the market, we had one airplane in the county to do all the aerial spray. Now they bring 7 or 8, and we've got the same acreage of crops, they're just spraying more. So clearly, it is more than evident that genetically modified crops create a greater usage of pesticides and herbicides, and that is where, and that is how you make the connection to my harms. My opponent also talks about the precautionary principle, and I wholeheartedly agree. The precautionary principle should absolutely be used, and we currently know what we know about herbicides and pesticides, and we know the effect that genetically modified organisms have on pesticide and herbicide usage. So why aren't we using the precautionary principle? Once again, I'm not asking for an outright ban on genetically modified organisms. I'm just asking for a label so that the customer can decide instead of industries. The customer can decide based on health and personal reasons as opposed to industry deciding based on profit margins and crop yields.
2 minutes, right?
That's correct.
1, 2, 3, all right.
Do you want me to tell you after 30 seconds?
Sure.
Seconds used. One minute used.
And I get 3 minutes or 6 minutes?
Yours is a 6-minute speech.
Yours is.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'd like to thank the affirmative, of course, to basically give me his argument because we both agreed on the same thing, and I'm just saying that his plan doesn't work. So let's just jump into it. So we both agreed that right now, I agree that there's not enough research being done. But I'm just saying that his plan on labeling, it's not going to do anything. In fact, it's just going to hurt the pocket of the consumers because we're the one that's paying for the money. So he was talking in the end about how he said that he's not talking about banning GMOs. He just wants to label it. And I'm just going to clarify that we were talking about banning. I'm just disagreeing with his plan about labeling GMOs. So I'm just going to restate that labeling GMO shouldn't be on the top of to-do list. Researching should be. Labeling GMO isn't unique. Again, like I've mentioned in my first speech, we have done this. 17 states has gotten this or is in the process to pass this. But really, if it's not safe, if GMO is so unsafe and there's all of these risks are actually happening on a large scale that, you know, it's going to really, really hurt us, why aren't we actually labeling them? Why aren't all 50 states, why isn't the whole world labeling GMO or even banning GMO, but at the very least labeling GMO, because that's his point. And then labeling GMO isn't unique, it's been done. GMOs are not harmful, regardless of what he said. My sources has mentioned for food safety news, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the American Medical Association, World Health Organization, Health Canada, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and the UN Food and Agricultural Organization, and the National Academies of Science all find modified food ingredients safe. Again, labeling GMO is not effective. This is the whole point of why there's this whole debate, because his plan was that he wants to pass a legislation labeling GM foods, and as a negative, I'm saying that the labeling of GMO will not actually do anything to prevent those risks. GMO labeling will increase grocery prices. He said that the cost will be insignificant, but it will increase grocery prices. I have 3 sources. GMO labeling will increase grocery prices. Required labeling of genetically engineered ingredients will raise food prices and cost consumers. internally, with mandatory GMO labeling, increased production costs will be passed to consumers. That is a food safety news writer at economics, the same guide, but for Cornell University. And also with mandatory GMO labeling, the food prices will rise because producers will stop using GMO products. That's the big one. And the source for that is Marta Jones, staff writer. He also mentions choice, and since I mentioned that most food already contains GMO, the soybean, corn, canola, and sugar beets, that's everything that is in the packaged food, and soft drinks, and everything else that we eat daily. If choice is the key here, and that's why labeling is so important, I'm just going to say that the choice is already there. There's something that's already labeled called organic foods, and if really people just don't really want to buy GM foods, or if the choice is the only thing that matters, then people already have the choice. We already have the choice to purchase organic food that doesn't contain GMOs. So since most American eats GMOs every day, labeling really wouldn't do anything. Earlier, I also mentioned that the absence of known risk prevent effective regulation, and this is something that we both agreed on, that there's not enough research. There's not the precautionary principle is not being applied to the degree that it's needed, but I'm saying that labeling will not really do anything. He's saying that the labeling will help consumers choose, and they will most likely avoid GM foods, but because GM foods on a large scale of farming, it's really, really easy and it's really cheap to make, it will definitely raise prices, like I've mentioned earlier. So basically, there's give labeling to GMOs, or making the labeling mandatory for GMOs will just cost too far much, according to my sources, for too little benefit. For what? It's just going to cost the consumers more money for the thing that he says is for the sake of freedom, so that we can choose, the consumers can choose. But since most food already contains GMOs again, then the choice is basically for consumers to buy organic food. And with that, I would urge for the negative ballot, because the affirmatives plan clearly is not going to deter consumers to avoid GMOs, because it's just going to cost them money. With that, I yield the rest of my time to the floor.
Yeah, and I should have 2:30 left. So if you could just let me know when I have a minute 30, and when I have 30, that'd be super. misunderstanding. My issue with genetically modified organisms isn't in them in and of themselves. My opponent gives sources saying that from all kinds of medical associations, whether they be intergovernmental or even here in the United States or Canada, saying that GMOs are safe. I'm not arguing whether or not genetically modified organisms in and of themselves are safe. I'm arguing that the production and the unintended consequences associated with genetically modified organisms are unsafe. And I proved that in my last speech. And my opponent also believes that research and development should be the priority. And I'd like to say that research and development and labeling are not mutually exclusive, and that we could do both. She also said that, she also asked why isn't the entire world labeling GMOs. That's mostly because the environment isn't